Welcome back, everyone, to the Broker Room Podcast. I'm Michael Simon, and today I'm joined by James Blackwell of Blackwell Real Estate in Annapolis, Maryland. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And James has been in the real estate industry now for 23 years, has owned his own brokerage for the last 11 years, and has built a very smart operation that includes a title company and a mortgage partnership. His team works across Maryland, D.C., Delaware, and Virginia with a strong focus on referral and relationship-driven business.
hmm
So, James, you've been in the business for 23 years now and an independent broker for 11. Let's start back at the beginning. How did you get started in real estate and what led you to open your own brokerage?
Well, I got to my senior year of college and I was working as a project manager for a commercial developer in DC. And I kind of started to realize that a lot of the good employees made just as much as the bad employees. And I realized that working for someone just kind of wasn't in the cards for me, or I needed more independence and maybe a profession where the better you did at it, the more you made. And I decided to leverage some contacts that I had, and I started a construction and property maintenance business. And I ran that for 4 years, and starting my senior year of college, and then I kind of got to my mid 20s and fell off one too many roofs and kind of realized that actually doing the work probably wasn't the path for me. And, I decided to get into real estate because I loved houses and construction, like every other story that a new agent tells you. And, got my license and joined a big brokerage in this area, one of the largest independent brokerages in the area at the time. And, just kind of struggled mightily my first year with them. And then I moved to a smaller company and the rest kind of started from there.
Yeah. And you've been, growing ever since. And now, you built something really interesting. You own a title company and have a mortgage partnership. Did anything in particular make you decide to create this one-stop model instead of running a more traditional brokerage?
Well, I mean, honestly, that just comes down to the way the residential real estate brokerage business model, runs today, with the commission splits being what they are. And, the fact that a good agent with a, established business deserves a high commission split. And when you were the broker on the other side of that, providing services and a platform for that agent to do their business, you got to find ways to make ancillary revenue that, doesn't necessarily come out of their pockets. And then also to just make it a win-win for the clients. Like the way we set everything up, our fees for our ancillary services are all just a little bit less than what most of the providers out there do, so that when our clients do decide to use our in-house mortgage and title, they're getting seasoned, serious people that have been in the industry for, 20 plus years, and they're getting a little bit of a discount. So it makes it a win for everyone. It makes it a win for the entity, which is what I consider Blackwell Real Estate to be, among the three companies. And it makes it a win for the agents because they can deal with a mortgage agent and a title processor and a title agent that they know is going to do a good job for their clients. And then, we made it so that our clients win and that they're going to get those services for a little bit less than, if they use some outside company. And it's really worked well for us. We have a very high capture rate because the agents aren't, we don't put zero pressure on them to use the in-house mortgage and title. The same thing with our clients, but they've always just been wowed by the service that they provide, and it's been a good fit for us.
Well, yeah, it certainly sounds like, a win-win for everybody, especially given the nature how it's very referral and relationship focused. So that's
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, the actual operations, can you walk us through what a typical day or week, looks for you right now? Are you still, involved in a lot of transactions versus running the brokerage itself and the other companies?
Well, honestly, I still do a lot of transactions. I'll still do 10 to 15 million a year on my own. I've got 43 agents. None of them are threatened by the fact that I'm a producing broker, because what I teach and train here is how to work, primarily by referral. And they know that the people in my life and the past clients in my life are not the past client, are not their past clients, it's not their friends or family. And then, I just find from a brokerage level, it really builds a nice synergy among the agents. We're not a brokerage that's built heavily on working internet leads or doing for sale by owners or, expired withdrawals. So when one of our agents, has an initiative that they brought into their business and it works for them, they feel like they can share it because it's not taking anything off of their plate. If anything, it's just making the plate at BRE bigger for everyone. And, that's that's just worked. I think if you look at our attrition rate, I think when you average it out, we lose maybe one agent every 3 or 4 years, and we've only had a handful of agents ever join us and then go leave to another brokerage, and all but one of those agents are no longer in the business, which I think is probably the thing I'm probably the proudest of, just is the fact that agents come here and they stay, and a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, all of them see their business increase because you know, uh, we solve a big problem that we feel like a lot of agents have, which is just having a system of how to run your business. And that's the value add that we give to, to agents in the recruiting pitches. I have the systems in place that I started that got me from 0 to 25 million a year in production in my third year in the industry. And they can plug right into that playbook and send out the exact same marketing, the exact same touch points that I use to run my business, grow my business, and still get to use it today, which, honestly gives me time to run the brokerage. I mean, I would say if 80% of my time is spent running the brokerage, doing things to help the agents, helping them through transactions, building trainings for them, doing trainings for them. And only 20% of my time is spent on doing the transactions. But, I've got that set up in such an efficient way that runs on autopilot that it doesn't really take a lot of my time, energy, and effort to do the production side of it as well.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it's run quite efficiently, and to have a retention rate like that is impressive in and of itself, especially in the real estate industry where I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the first year like 90% end up, dropping out or doing something different altogether? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's 85% get out in 2 years and 95% get out in five. And,
Okay.
I always say that I think a big piece of that is that what this industry looks like from the outside is completely different than what it is on the inside. If you're someone out there that's just thinking about getting your real estate license, what you think you're going to be doing all day is showing houses, sitting at home inspections, going to settlements, doing listing presentations. When you realize that that's the easy part, and that's maybe 10% of your time, how the vast majority of what you do as an agent is finding the clients. And, I also think that a lot of new agents underestimate what it takes to get there. Like, the story I tell people is my first year in business, I sold two houses, one of which was to myself, right? So I didn't exactly set the world on fire. I was a full-time agent just out there struggling, trying to figure out how to do it. And I moved from that big brokerage to a smaller company that still had 30 offices in the area. And I went from a 200 agent office to a 30 agent office, and just a much more, cooperative, helpful environment. And then I found Buffini and Company, and Brian Buffini's method of working by referral. In my second year in business, I did 27 deals, and then I did 42 my third. And I tell people I was the same person, the same age, had the same friends, from that first year to the second year. And the difference was just finding a system to work that fit me to a T, and then having some time in to let my career mature, if that makes sense, to earn the trust of people, to refer me to their friends and family. And, that's what we teach here.
Of course, yeah, as cliche as it might sound, you need to find the right fit. And in your case, that's exactly what happened. It started off a little bit slow, and then you went to a place where you were put in an environment where you could really grow and mature your practice, like you said. And lo and behold, here we are. So, definitely agree with you on that front. And what you said about, people getting into the industry and not knowing what to expect, that's another trend I've seen on a lot of people I've spoken to on here. Like you said, they think they're just going to join, they're going to be showing houses and have all this activity going on. But really, the activity you're going to be seeing is just the grind, trying to get in front of people. And yeah, I think that's a very, common misconception. And people can be really unprepared for what's needed to be successful in that. And then, again, talking about the industry, thank you again for telling us about, your practice and what a typical day to day is like. So, what I want to do is zoom out a little bit and, ask you about how the industry has changed really in the last few years. What are the biggest, trends you're seeing around your market right now with respect to, Annapolis, Maryland, and the DC area?
Well, I mean, inventory has been the gigantic driver of the, basically across the country. Um, I would say
shortage?
sort of I don't know, the changes that we've seen, lately is that there's seems to be a lot of, there's a lot of AI companies now knocking on agents' doors,
Yes.
and a lot of, problems that are being solved, with technology to make the agent's life easier, to make outreach easier, to manage your databases. I think that's another big one. I mean, that's one of the big things that we do is basically database management. And, we teach our agents that that's not a name on the list. That's a relationship. And I've seen that a lot of the CRM platforms that we use now are really getting into outreach and trying to fill in the gaps for the agents. And I think that's probably the biggest difference. Just it seems like the tools that we're all getting to help run our business are getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And once we have a little bit more inventory, it's certainly going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, it definitely will be. And with respect to, the tools that you mentioned, sounds like CRM, lead integration have been pretty, high up on the list. Is there anything else or any other ways you're leveraging AI currently or plan to do in the future, hopefully?
Well, I mean, it's crazy. We use one service now just sometimes to double check our competitive market analysis in the system that can go in and, crunch all the data and look at the pictures and read the descriptions and, really give you a better idea of the value of a home. I think that's something that's definitely going to come and improve, that we've all, kind of made fun of Zillow and there's estimates for years and how wildly inaccurate they can be. And it's, it's that algorithm now, it seems like it's starting to build, it's pulling in more and more data and they're getting more and more accurate, you know. So we'll do that. We'll use AI to help us write our listing descriptions. That's another uh, big help. I know I listed a really nice luxury condo in Baltimore, a couple of months ago, and I used AI to help me write the listing description for it. I said, go look at these 9 listings in the building and pull out the common elements and their descriptions, do some research on the building and the area, and come back to me with a, 2,000 character description that then, in a friendly, professional tone. And what would have taken me 2 or 3 hours to do before, to write a really good, high quality description of this property, it knocked it out in a couple of minutes. And the longest point of that was me writing the prompt and giving it the data and telling it where to go to look for the data to come back with this description that, when the funny thing is when you send these descriptions to the clients, they call you Shakespeare, because it's so much, it's so much more eloquent sometimes than we are. And it fixes the grammar and the punctuation errors that I tend to be known for.
Yeah, sometimes, when you have it put together a presentation like that, it can be rarely I've seen it can be sometimes a little robotic where you might be reading and say, wait a minute, this seems a little bit off. But yeah, it's certainly got much more advanced where it presents it in a way, like you said, it's just so eloquent and, you almost get taken back by it when it's, in front of you. And
And it
AI,
and it's
as
really interesting too, just to say how if you compare the different models that are out there, how some of them are better at writing than others, and some of them are better at research than others. And that was another thing that I thought was really interesting about when we started to integrate AI into sort of how we run the ship.
yeah, I've used Gemini, I've used ChatGPT, I've used Grok, I've used Claude. Probably right now, I gotta give a slight edge to Claude and just in terms of what I do personally, if I want to, meet with the client about, an AI solution or put together a presentation based on, things we talk about, it just takes about 2 minutes and, it's just got everything so fine-tuned, here's what they need, here's what you can offer, here's why it makes sense, here's how much it costs, here's why it costs what it costs, so there's a lot of transparency, you really understand what you're getting and why you're getting it, and that everything is just broken down so well, it's incredible.
Yeah,
But, as good of
you're
a
right.
solution.
Claude is the best writing AI out there so far because I've used all the. I also use Perplexity. I found that I think that's an interesting idea that Perplexity and its computer can go out and use different AI tools. Like it will go to ChatGPT or it will go to Grok, or it'll go to Claude, depending on what task that it's trying to accomplish for you. I think that's kind of an interesting idea of knowing which platforms are better at different things.
Mm. Yeah, that is a great concept. I haven't messed around with it too much, but I'm going to in the near future just to see how I can also leverage it too. But yeah, like an AI that chooses what's the best AI, it's just keeps going on and on.
Right. I think that's the agent model, right, where they're building out agents for you, and it knows which agent is going to be best to perform that product or perform that prompt for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what we can do now, and, as great of a solution as, AI can be, not just to the industry, but in general, there's also gonna be some challenges that are still presented too, and again, if we look at, what's going on today in the current markets, whether it's, inventory, rates, competition, maybe something AI related, I'm not sure, what do you think right now are the top challenges, you and your agents are facing today? And by extension, you could talk about the industry too and as a whole for that same question.
Hmm. I think it's probably just cutting through the noise. I mean, it seems like there's a solution being presented to us all the times for problems we didn't even realize we had. And I think that there's another little problem I see is maybe the shiny object syndrome that's happening right now. Where everyone needs to be on social media, everyone needs to do this, everyone needs to do
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and I think there's a little bit of a drift that's taking place of just realizing that at the end of the day, the way we win and the way we're not going to be replaced is in that relationship aspect to what a real estate agent does. There's a lot of conversation around, will the internet replace real estate agents, or will the AI replace agents? And you know, it just, the biggest thing that we do as agents is to kind of be that partner that's side by side with the client, that's looking at the house with them, that's helping them get over their fears, helping them kind of make decisions. And that's, the part of it that I think is that's the part that's never going to that you're not going to be able to replace us by, and I think sometimes that is getting lost in today's world, is that no, this really is a relationship business. And at the end of the day, you can have whatever system you have that does the cold outreach or does the whatever, but you need to make sure that you know how to service the client, that you can build a relationship with the client, and that, the client deserves your trust, because you know what you're doing, you know that you're going to put their interests first. And, I think that's probably the biggest challenge agents might have now, is just kind of drowning that out and still understanding what their job really is.
Yes, 100%. That is one of the biggest talking points I've had since I started the podcast. That's a question that everybody is asking themselves. And pretty much everyone is in universal agreement who I've spoken to. Yes, it's going to make life easier, especially from like an administrative and research, perspective. But ultimately, you can't replace that human connection. That's what you need, because sometimes you even take on the role as a therapist almost, because you have to work with these clients, their emotions, taking them through the process. This is one of the biggest decisions they're going to make in their life, really. And, no matter how good the technology is, they're just never going to be able to do that. I mean, if you're having last minute thoughts and you're worried, you can't just, talk to a machine and be like, hey, what do I do? You need that human connection for it. So, yes, I believe that while AI is going to make our lives a lot easier, whether it be real estate or any other industry for that matter, you can't ultimately replace the agent. I mean, you'll hear some silly one off stories. Like, I don't know if you heard this, but there was actually someone in Florida who did sell their home purely with AI. I'm not quite sure how they did it. I read the article, they went through all the legal channels
Yeah.
apparently, and the paperwork was in good order, but, I'm just gonna chalk that up as, an anomaly. That's not gonna be the trend, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I don't see that being a mass, where the market is moving in mass. There's eh, people need to have that trusted person by them, just to opt to be that backstop. I think about all the transactions I've done where the person on the other side of the transaction was unrepresented, and how lumpy those transactions are, and how a lot of times that person they fight you on the things they really shouldn't be fighting you on, and then they lay down on the things that they should fight push back on, because they don't know. And even if one of the other challenges I guess we have now is a lot of times you can tell when someone has gone to chat gpt or one of these models to try to come up with an answer and argue with you or negotiate with you, and it's just flatly wrong, or it's hallucinated. It's not right in any way, shape, or form, but they feel like, well, since chat gpt said it, this must be absolutely true. And it's no, no, not really. And it's missing these parts along the way as well. So, it certainly has a way to go if it comes to actually trying to do the transaction. That's for sure.
Yeah, it does. I still don't know how that transaction was completed. I didn't really look that deep into it, but for me, whether I was the buyer or the agent, that's just going to make me, well, no, excuse me, not the agent, because the agent doesn't apply here. If I'm the buyer, that just makes me feel very just uncomfortable because, again, you don't know, again, just because ChatGPT or whatever other agent said, oh, yeah, it's true. You really have no idea. And every state, has different laws, different regulations. And there's just so many areas where just one little thing could be wrong. And then lo and behold, that could, just mess up the whole deal, cause you a whole mess of legal trouble. So, definitely not something, I want anything to be a part of. No matter how well the technology develops, still, when it comes to something of that nature, buying a home or any property for that matter, I want that human connection.
Yeah. If you ever want to have a little fun, just go to the three big platforms and ask it the same question that's real estate related, and see the vast difference in answers you might get for something that's relatively a simple question, because sometimes it can be wildly off.
Yes, it can. And I've done that too on several topics. Nothing of that, importance, like buying a house. But yeah, they definitely all have different responses. Sometimes they're similar, in content and nature, but the way they're worded, and then sometimes the content itself can just be, completely opposite. So it's like, okay, well, this is telling me one thing, this is telling me the other. Who's telling me the truth? That's a whole nother rabbit hole you got to go down. So, again, James, thank you for, that piece as well. We talked about your past, how you got started, the present, your company, what's going on in the markets. Now, I just want to come and look a little bit at the future as we come towards, the end of the of time here. So, let's say the next 6 to 12 months. Ideally, what does that look like for you and your company? Any particular, goals or milestones you have, and by extension, is there anything you have AI related you want to see accomplished in that time frame as well?
Well, we also own a referral brokerage. Um, but unlike a lot of companies that will name their referral brokerage, Blackwell Referrals or KW Referrals or whatever, our referral brokerage is called greatagents.net. And, the thinking behind it is that, that's also a platform that we can grow, sort of similar to Homelight, where a consumer can say, hey, we need to find a real estate agent, and we want a good real estate agent. We want a service to help us find one. And we're starting to build that out. We're rebuilding the website, and we're using a lot of AI to rebuild the website, to rebuild the forms, to rebuild some of the marketing plans for that. So I'm kind of excited for that over the next 6 to 12 months, to sort of see how we use AI to help us grow that business. Because that we have agents that come to us that they don't want to do transactions anymore, but they want to still generate income from the time they took to get their license. And we have the solution where they don't have to be a member of a board. They don't have to have MLS access. But like in Maryland, there's no such thing as a referral license. Either you have a real estate license or you don't. And we're again using AI to build out marketing that these agents can now use to still stay in touch with their clients in their sphere, and say, hey, if you need to find an agent, reach out to me. I'm with this company that specializes in and pre-interviewing and sorting through agents to make sure that, if you need an agent because you're moving to Ohio, that you just don't end up with someone that spent a lot of money on marketing that doesn't know what they're doing. We're calling these agents, we're interviewing them. And, I would think after being in this industry for, 23 plus years, I know the difference between a good agent and a bad agent. And we're going to be, helping to connect consumers there, and also build out a referral source for Blackwell real estate, because if someone's looking for an agent in Maryland, I'm pretty sure that I think that our agents are the best around in Maryland, DC, Delaware, and Virginia. So I'm excited for that, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these AI tools can help us to build the runway out for that business.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds like definitely there's a lot to look forward to. I think it's going to end up really well. And again, as we're coming up on time here, one question I always like to ask towards the tail end is, for anybody looking to get involved in the industry today, just starting out, any words of wisdom?
I would say treat it like a business, treat it like a job. I think the biggest mistake that I see with new agents getting into the industry is they get their license and they're very excited that they have their license and they give out a few business cards, but that's about it. And then that license just kind of sits there. I think that's another big thing that you really need to think about when you do get into this industry, is realize that it is a lot of work and it's going to take longer than you think it is. It's definitely worth it. I think that this business is the fairest that there is, because you will never see a successful agent who sells a lot of properties just luck into it. It's because they grinded on their business and they treated it like a business. And even when you get your license and you join a brokerage, you need to kind of realize that you have just started your own business, your own franchise, basically, of that industry. And you have to set aside time to grow it and to learn. So many agents, they get their license and then they just have it and that's it. You need to schedule time with yourself, every week, every day, whatever the time that you have available, and treat it like, I'm getting up and I'm going to this job right now. Even if that's just you're leaving your kitchen and walking into your bedroom where you have a desk set up, and you got to make sure that you have time set aside every week that you're working on your business. You're working on gaining skills, you're working on learning, you're working on outreach, not just, oh yeah, I have a real estate license. I think that is the absolute best advice you can give anyone who gets into this industry, is make sure you treat it like a job, that you have to work and put hours in, not just have the license.
Definitely. That's what's going to separate those from a very successful and then those who might just barely get by or end up leaving the industry at all. You kill what you eat in this business, and, you got to make sure you're putting the time and the effort in if you're going to ultimately want to succeed.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And James, this has been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate your insights and you joining us here today. Before we wrap up, where's the best place for our listeners to go to learn more about you, what you do, and potentially even work with you?
Well, they can just go on our website, bremove.com. So originally we were blackwellrealestate.com, but we realized that that was a very long email address, James Blackwell at blackwellrealestate.com. So we changed it to BRE Move, and you can just go on our website and hit contact us, and we'd be more than happy to help anyone.
Outstanding. Well, James, thank you again. Really appreciate you here. Hope you have a good one, sir.
You too. Thanks a lot, Michael.